Hey everyone, welcome to today's CR webinar. My name is Harsha. I'm one of the verbal experts here at GMAT, and it's excellent to have all of you here. All right, so without any further ado, let me get started. So, first things first, what is it that we are here to do today? What is it that we are planning to do today? Today, I want to do a deep dive with you into what is arguably one of the most important core skills as far as critical reasoning is concerned. Now, this is a core skill that I like to call, let me just bring in my pen. This is a core skill that we like to call the ability to visualize sentences. Now, I want to demonstrate to you through this session the impact that this one skill has on the way you solve your CR question. That done, it's not a session if I'm also not teaching you something. So hopefully by the end of the session, you will get something of a crash course on how do you go about reading sentences and building that level of understanding that we like to call visualization. So hope you guys are looking forward to this. The next question is, how are we going to do this? Very simple format. Um, Essentially, you're going to start off, I'm going to throw you into the fire. You're going to solve two questions together. Two questions. These are OG questions. These are considered 700 level questions, but these are very interesting questions. Once you solve these questions, I'm going to introduce to you the concept of sentence visualization. So this part right here, there's a little bit of theory that we'll cover because that context is necessary if you want to understand what I'm trying to tell you. Once that is done, once you've learned how to visualize sentences, you're going to apply your knowledge back to the two questions that you started with, and then we'll try to resolve those questions. Hopefully, some of you at least might see a difference there between the previous version and the current version. Now, once that is done, if we still have time, we will try another question. So I'm going to give you exactly 2 minutes. That this is the time that you should have typically when you're solving it, on the GMAT. So if you're ready for question one, we can float the poll for question one on screen. All the best. I'm going to see you in another 2 minutes. Kanupriya, if you could just share the poll link on the chat if it's not already done. All right, so now it's time to move to the second question. So I hope you guys are ready. We are going to the second question, and Kanupriya, if you can put in the poll for the second question as well on the screen. So here's a question. Again, you have roughly around 2 minutes for this, and then let's discuss. So I'll give you a few more seconds for this because I do see that quite a few of you are taking a bit of time on this one. Though, of course, ideally in your exam, you will take 2 minutes for this. All right, folks, last 15 seconds, and then let's jump right into discussing visualization. All right, so last three, two, one, and there you go. Good job. Very good answers overall. Um, so let's get into discussing visualization. So meanwhile, I can see that a lot of highs have come in. So Huzan, is always good to see you. Hi Vikram. Hi Vinay. Hi Koli. Tata say. Hey Vasundhara. Good to see you here. And hi Edgar. So it's good to see all of you here. And let me get into what we are here for today. Now you solved 2 questions. Let's quickly first discuss the stats for these questions. So with regard to the first question, let's see how we fared. Um, Pretty much nobody chose this one. I see 2 people chose this. Around one of you chose this one. Around 7 or 8 people have chosen this, and I also see a couple of you have chosen this answer choice. This is for question 1. And hey, Nimishika, welcome to the session. And let's also discuss question 2. Let's also register the stats for question 2. So let me just give me 1 second. And let's see how we have done in this. So one of us chose option A, which is interesting. One of us chose option B. Option C was somewhat popular. D was not so popular, and E was also somewhat popular, pretty popular, in fact. So good choices, good, interesting choices. Now let's get into what we are here for today. So we've done the sprint. Now let's talk about what is arguably the most important core skill if you have to understand sentence visualization. But to do that, first we have to understand what we mean by core skills. Now, I've been helping students prepare for the GMAT in the last 3 or 4 years, and every year, eventually, I come across quite a few students who walk into their GMAT preparation with a certain mindset about GMAT preparation. And the mindset is very simple. The mindset is, hey, what does it take to succeed on the GMAT? It's about making sure you're familiar with all the question types, making sure you've practiced a ton of questions. You should know all the concepts. Eventually, it is what I call a practice oriented approach. Once you know the concepts, just practice a ton of questions. Problem solved. Now, definitely, there is a segment of people for whom this is the right approach, but that's not all of us. In fact, for quite a few of us, it's not the case. Despite practicing a ton of questions, despite practicing a ton of official questions, somewhere the score is not there. You're not able to hit that 700 or 740. In fact, when we look at a lot of retakers who come to us, this is precisely the problem we see. Like they've already exhausted all the practice material that's out there in the universe, but the score is not there. And when you think about why is that so, the core thing to realize is that the GMAT is not a kind of test of rote learning. The GMAT is actually a test of certain fundamental skills. We like to call these core skills. Now, the thing about core skills is, for some of you, maybe because of the work that you have done, or maybe because of some other reason, you might already have these core skills in place. If you're this person, all you need to do is familiarize yourself with the concepts and then practice, practice, practice. But for the rest of us, these core skills have to be built. And it's incorrect to assume that just practicing a ton of questions, just blind force practice, will get you mastery over these core skills. Not necessarily so. So remember, the GMAT is a test of certain core skills. Now, When it comes to critical reasoning, what are these core skills? To understand that, we have to get into the root of what is critical reasoning. So, when you think about critical reasoning, what is it fundamentally? It's essentially a test of a reasoning ability, right? It's a test of your ability to understand a certain line of reasoning, or what I like to call logic. And it's also a test of your ability to evaluate a certain line of reasoning. That's what you do with finding the underlying assumption, finding the flaw in the argument. You're analyzing a certain line of reasoning. Now, the core point here is, to understand CR, you need to understand reasoning. But what exactly is reasoning? Thankfully, we have the answer. The official guide actually gives us this definition. Any set of statements in which at least one of the statements, let's say S1, provides logical support to another, let's say S2. This is an example of reasoning. And when you know this from all of you who have already done a little bit of CR, you know that this is true. So if you really think about it, if you want to master critical reasoning, you need to master reasoning. If you want to become a master of reasoning, first master statements. It starts with truly masterizing statements, being a master of statements or sentences. Now, it's very important to understand this, because this is where the core skills actually come from. Definitely, CR at its core is a test of your ability to understand a line of logic or reasoning. It's also a test of your ability to evaluate a certain logic, to identify what is the underlying assumption, to identify the hidden paradox, to identify how to weaken a certain line of reasoning. Definitely these two are skills. But if you want to understand a line of reasoning, first you have to comprehend sentences, and that's where the ability to visualize sentences comes in a minute. I'm going to explain to you why I use the term visualize very, very specifically. Now, the ability to comprehend sentences to that granular level is great, but that alone is not sufficient. Invariably, on the GMAT, sometimes the sentences are far trickier than that. There is an explicit meaning that's given to you, but there is something else that that author is implying. There is some inference to be drawn there. And unless you catch that hidden implication or inference, you're not going to truly understand what's going on. So the ability to draw inferences is also a supremely important skill at this level. Now, this could be inferences from a single statement, or inferences from multiple statements, which is what we like to call combination inferences. Finally, the ability to analyze answer choices basis question type is also a core skill. Now, very technically speaking, this is nothing but analysis of logic, but because you have so many question types and each question type requires a certain different type of analysis, we still thought it's better to categorize it as a separate core skill in itself. So in today's session, our core focus is on this one ability, that is the ability to visualize sentences. All right. So let's see how to go about doing all this. So just give me 1 minute. Perfect. So when I say ability to visualize sentences, there's another thing that I really, really want you to keep in mind. Sentences does not mean just the passage or argument. Of course, in any passage, you have sentences. If it's an argument, you have premises and conclusion. Visualizing this stuff is important. But remember, your question stem is also a sentence. A lot of times, the test maker puts a trap right here. And if you're not careful, you'll fall for it. Number two, the answer choices are also sentences. So the skill that you see here, it translates to answer choices as well. The mistake that a lot of students make is, when we look at answer choices, we kind of rush things. When you have an answer choice, you read the answer choice, and then immediately after reading the answer choice, sometimes we jump directly into analyzing the answer choice. Answer choice analysis is actually a two-step process. Once you have read the answer choice, you have to make sure that you have truly comprehended the answer choice. So this ability to visualize sentences actually plays a part here as well. Without building that understanding, any analysis you do downstream is actually not useful, right? So if these core ideas are clear, then let's get into sentence visualization through a simple example. um, this is the last bit of theory for the day. After this, I'm going to just throw exercises after exercises after you at you, so make sure that you pay attention. So I'm giving you a very, very simple sentence, because it's always good to start with simple sentences. Kevin is taller than Devin. For those of you, it's also a basketball reference, but yeah, besides the point. So if I give you a sentence which says Kevin is taller than Devin, now there are three ways that a typical GMAT aspirant reads this sentence. One is what I call mechanical reading, one is what I call understanding, and one is what I call visualization, which is for me the next level of understanding. Now, when I say mechanical reading, Imagine the situation when you are scrolling through your Instagram, you're browsing through your YouTube, and parallelly trying to read something. When that's happening, your brain is not even processing the information properly. Forget understanding things, forget internalizing things. And when I say internalization, it means that it's not just that you have understood it, it's in your head. If I ask you to explain the idea to me, you can do it in your own words without looking at the text. That's internalization, it's in your head. When you're mechanically reading, like the case when you're scrolling through Instagram and parallelly trying to read something, this does not happen. This is very, very bad for all things GMAT, quant, verbal, everything. Don't do this. This is where a lot of us are. We really look at the sentence and we break down that sentence. We focus on understanding that sentence, which is great. We truly understand what is meant by Kevin is taller than Devin. Fantastic. That's clear. But sometimes what happens is you understood it while you read it, but it's not internalized in your brain. The symptom is, a lot of times, I'm sure some of you, if you have faced this, you can put a yes on that chat as well. A lot of you would have seen this. You, while you read the passage, you understood a certain sentence, but then when you're doing answer choice analysis, when you're analyzing some option C or an option D, you had to come back and reread that sentence because you're not clear about it, despite the fact that you kind of understood it the first time around. When you see that happening, that is the gap between understanding and visualization. While you read it, you understood it, but you didn't internalize it. That internalization did not happen. Now, in this statement, this is very, very easy. So I'm pretty sure nobody has a problem with any of these steps. But as the sentences get more complex, you will see the gap between understanding and visualization truly come through. Now, what is visualization? Here, it's not just that I'm reading this. As I read this, a picture actually forms in my brain. I'm engaging the creative aspects of my brain, the creative side of my brain, to form that picture. Imagination is an underrated thing on the GMAT. If you can truly imagine what's going on, your brain is more actively involved in processing that information. For example, you can practically visualize a Kevin and a Devin, and you can see that Kevin is taller than Devin. I should have added legs as well. Yeah. So when you read it, that picture is forming in your brain. And then when this happens, your internalization also typically happens because that image is there in your brain. You're just not reading it as a very from a pure logic lens. You're using your brain to actually picturize that. So I hope this difference between visualization, understanding, and mechanical reading is very clear. So meanwhile, let me read some comments as well. Sailesh, all the best. You have it scheduled for next week. I hope you learned something useful here. And some of you have faced this exact same situation. Now you understand what is visualization. Now, this is what I call a 700 plus skill. A lot of people who are in that 660-ish range, not able to break into 700 plus, not able to get to that 730, 740 and beyond, they're very, very good at understanding. But that with the higher level questions, often visualization becomes important. And when I say visualization, it's not just the argument, visualization of the answer choices, especially the gap between getting the difference between getting a 730 and getting a 750 or a 760. A lot of complex answer choices do come in. The logic is more complex. Your ability to visualize really gets tested a lot more. So keep all these aspects in mind. Now, the core lesson for you is, don't just read. This mechanical reading is bad for you. Just throw it into the gutter. It's not going to help you ever. Try to get into that zone where you're making your brain more active. In this session, I'm going to try to give you an idea about how I read sentences, how I try to get into this visualization mode. Hopefully it will help you as well. Now, for me, this is something important that you should understand. What is the acid test of visualization? When will I consider that I have visualized something? If I can explain the idea communicated by that sentence in my own words without any distortion in the meaning, that means it's in my head. I can explain it. If I have to explain it to my friend, I can explain it. If you're able to do this, you've truly visualized it. The more you're able to do this, the stronger your understanding of the argument, the stronger your answer choice analysis, everything improves. And we're going to see how even in the questions that you've seen here, these are the small things that will help you. So let's do our first sentence visualization exercise. We're going to start off with a very simple one. So the key point to remember is, I'm going to give you around a minute. This should take you only around 30-40 seconds, but I'm still going to give you around a minute. Once that minute is done, you will not have the sentence for reference. You will see a set of 4 questions. You have to answer those 4 questions without any reference to the sentence. That's the challenge. because I'm trying to build your ability to visualize. All right. So let's get to it. There's a sentence. I'll give you around 1 minute to read this. If you want, you can write alak, no problem. But writing down the sentence entirely may not help. Up to you. All right. I'm pretty sure that's enough time for this particular sentence. So let's just jump into the questions. So KP, if you can share uh, the form for this one. The 4 questions are visible here as well, but it will be there in the form anyway. All the best. All right. So I think pretty much all of you are done at this point, and these are not difficult questions at all. I'll be surprised if you got even one of these questions wrong, to be frank. So we'll come back to the questions in a bit. That's not the important point. The important point is how do you approach a question like this? What is it that you should do, right? So meanwhile, I'm just going through the responses. I can see that uh, most of you got the first question right. Most of you got the second question right as well, though I do see some interesting results in the third question. So we'll get to that. Now, let's talk about how do you visualize a sentence like this. Now, there are some principles that I'm going to share with you, and you're going to see that in action right now. And the first principle is don't rush through any sentence. You have more than enough time on the GMAT. The GMAT is not a test of your ability to handle time pressure. The 2 minutes that you have to solve a CR question more than sufficient. You can read things slow. So point number one, read things slowly. Point number two, if it's a complex sentence, if it's a long sentence, don't just read it in one go. Break things down. The reason I ask you to break down sentences into chunks is to allow your brain the time to process that information. And that's one of the things that students typically miss out on. You have to give your brain the time to breathe, to process that information, to absorb that information. So let's see all these things at work. All right. So you'll see that I've broken down the sentence at specific points. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to break at this particular point. This is as per my convenience. I felt that if I break here, it will allow my brain to process the information better. So you don't have to go into this mode that this is the only way to break the sentence down. Okay. So I'm doing it this way, but the principle is important. So this September, so we're talking about this September. So the minute I read this September, I'm thinking about September 2022. So far, so good. So this September, as a result of a recent advertising campaign. So something happened as a result of the recent advertising. There's a recent advertising campaign, and something happened as a result. This is the cause. So this September, as a result of a recent advertising campaign, ABC Inc., obviously a company, it witnessed a 10% increase. So you saw a 10% increase. Great. In cola sales. So what kind of sales very specifically? Sales of cola. Keep that in mind. As compared to sales last September. So essentially this September compared to last September. So now you have a comparison. So September 2022 is being compared with September 2021. As a result of a certain advertising campaign, what happened? There you saw cola sales increase by 10%. So let's say if there was 100 earlier, let's say $100 million earlier, now it is $110 million. And this 10% increase thanks to the advertising campaign. So you don't necessarily have to scribble things and put things on paper the way I've shown you, but you should allow your brain the time to process this information and ask those questions. Okay, what sales? Cola sales. As compared to when? As compared to last September. So it's not as compared to last month or something else, right? Now, the principles that you've seen here, this is a very simple sentence. I doubt if any of you really had too much of an issue with it, but the principles are important. Read slowly. Skipping, skimming, rushing is bad for your GMAT. Keep that in mind. Especially if it's a large sentence. If I give you a sentence like Kevin is taller than Devin, you don't have to break that down. But when you have a larger sentence, give your brain the time to process and absorb that information. Break it down into break down those sentences into manageable chunks. Now, ask yourself questions to ensure that your brain processes. Now, for example, what kind of sales? Cola sales. The minute I say that, that cola is imprinted in my brain. It's not that my brain read through cola and did not process the word. I know what sales it is. So if somebody asks me what sales, I can answer that without looking at it. End of the day, as you're reading these things, you should truly be able to imagine a cola company. So when I was going through this, I thought of, okay, maybe Coca-Cola advertising campaign. I thought about Coke's open happiness campaign, and as a result, 10% increase. That imagination is important. That will help you a lot. Get your brain to form that picture. End of the day, especially for complex sentences, maybe not this one, but a more complex one, try and see if you're able to explain it in your own words. That's how you build the muscle of visualization. So far so good. Everything coming together. This one was, I'm pretty sure it's not a particularly difficult exercise. So I just hope that the principles are clear. And those of you who are able to do this as the questions get tougher, as the sentences get tougher, you guys will see a lot of benefit, right? Shouldn't it be compared with? Compared to is also correct, right? So the answers here are very obvious. I would be surprised if any of you did not really choose cola. Uh, that's good to know that you guys, your brain processed cola. Uh, I think one or two of you went wrong here. You obviously the answer is B. It is the advertising campaign that led to the increase in sales and not vice versa. When was the advertising company done? Now this is a question where a lot of you went wrong. If I go back to the results, let me see. 9 of you chose this September, 10 of you chose cannot say. And that's very interesting for me. So, what happened here? The correct answer is you cannot say. Why is that? All you know from the sentence is the sales increase is September. Yes, you know that. Great. We also know that this increase was a result of a recent ad campaign. But nowhere are we given that this recent ad campaign actually happened in September. Recent could be August 31st or August 30th also, right? How do you know for sure it is September? A good number of you actually chose this September. It's actually wrong. You cannot infer that. The correct answer is cannot say. If you go back to the sentence, all I know is that the advertising campaign is recent. I have no idea if it's so recent that it's exactly in this month. It could have been August 30, 31 for all you know. Right? So question 3 was interesting. I was sure that some of you would falter. I didn't expect 50%. I mean, roughly 50%. So anything that you learned here? That's great. All right. So good. Now, let's take it one step further. We are going to do a slightly trickier exercise, slightly trickier question. This time, I'm going to give you something from an OG passage, one of my favorite OG passages, OG questions. Um, Again, the principle is the same. I'm going to give you roughly around a minute, maybe a little more for this one because it's a little longer. And after that, intentionally, I'm not going to show you the passage On the exam, of course, you always have the passage for reference, but here we are just practicing a muscle. We are just building a muscle. So, all right. So, let's get to question number 2 on your screen. All right, that should be enough time for the passage, I believe. So we could go on to uh, the set of questions. And again, just 4 questions. I hope that you were also able to apply some of the things that we saw. So all the best. Hey, folks, one request from me is, as far as possible, not as far as possible, just do not put your answers on the chat. The reason for that is it biases somebody else's judgment. They look at that and they think it's the correct answer or it's the wrong answer. You don't know. You'd rather have people solve the questions without any bias. That's why we have polls. So let me give you another 10 seconds. I think most of you are done at this point. All right. So we have around 25, 26 responses in. Now, Very quickly, I wanted to understand from you. Uh, did you guys find it very easy, or was there, did you find it a little more difficult this time? How was the overall feel? Did you once you read the passage, once you visualized the sentences, did you find it a little more comfortable? Did you feel the need to go back to the passage and like, okay, I'm not sure of this, should I mean wish I could go and check? Did you any of you felt that at some point? Easy to moderate. Silas says yes, I felt that. So that is fundamentally this gap between understanding and visualization that I'm talking about. I'm sure that you understood it when you read it, but did you internalize it? If you internalize it, you won't have to go back. Now, that doesn't mean that on the exam, if you ever go back, that's a wrong thing. No. Once in a while, we all have to go back. None of us is perfect. But the more you have to go back, the more it's a red flag. And that's something you have to remember. All right. So that's good. Um, I struggle when I get new words in CR, words I don't understand. I understand where you're coming from, but trust me, once you put in the right processes in, you start figuring out. Once you start realizing that the GMAT is not meant to be a test of your English language ability. It's not about your vocabulary at all. Most of the cases, even when you see unfamiliar words, you can kind of infer the meaning from context, or it doesn't even get tested. You see that also. All right. I wish I had the passage with me. Huzan says, all right, I get that. All right. So I do want to touch upon the results here because they are interesting. Um, and the discussion, I see some of the discussion points also. Here, around 18 of you told me the answer is small, and around 8 of you told me the answer is cannot say. Let's talk about question two. I was happy to see quite a few of you got particulate, but then I also see other answer choices like air, I see environment, which are all, by the way, incorrect answer. The only correct answer there was particulate. So uh, that's true. Now let's come to which of these is not true. This is a question where most of you have got it. Around three of you have chosen this, which cannot be the right answer because it is actually given in the passage. It is true, but one of you fell for this one as well. So that's there. Now let's talk about question number four. Question number four is very interesting. 15 of you said flourishing is right, two of you said struggling, and nine of you said cannot say. Now, very, very interesting results. Even in, this is a sample size of around 26 people, and yet the results are supremely interesting. Now, let's discuss this. And again, the principles, very, very same. We are going to take it slow, fragment the sentence to make sure our brain has time to process. Let's get through this. Okay. So Vitex has developed a small diesel engine. So there's this company called Vitex. It seems to be a company. It has come up with a certain engine. What kind of engine? Small diesel engine. All right, that's clear to me. Perfect. So it has produced a small diesel engine. That's great. This engine produces 30% less particulate pollution. So what kind of pollution? Particulate pollution. Whatever particulate is, some kind of pollution called particulate pollution that the engine made, that I mean 30% less particulate pollution than the engine made by its main rival once. So now I know that there is one Vitex and there is once. I know that once is the main rival for Vitex. That's given to me. Great. And I know that the Vitex engine produces 30% less particulate pollution. So if I had to put a number to it, let's say the in terms of pollution units, I don't know if such a unit exists, but let's say in terms of pollution units, if 100 units of pollution caused by a one's engine, then this should be 70, 30% less. So far so good. Let's continue this. Than the engine made by its main rival once, which is great. Now widely used in Marania. So in other words, what does this mean? It's also important to not just read but also think about what you're reading. So when it says it's widely used, immediately the word that comes to my mind is it's kind of popular. It is used, right? It's not something that nobody uses in this state. So the one's engine is somewhat popular. That's what I take away from now widely used. So the question I will ask is, when you are reading now widely used in Marania, did your brain think about what widely used means? You don't have to come up with the exact word that's popular, but okay, widely used. Okay, this one is. It's not a bad product. There is a certain level of usage that you associate with it. It's kind of popular. Your brain should think of those things. All right, that's how visualization happens. Now let's continue. So Vitex's engine, so far so good. It is well suited, so fantastically suitable for use in the thriving warehousing businesses in Marania. So we are given that this Vitex engine, it is pretty well suited for certain businesses in Marania. What kind of businesses? Warehousing businesses. What do we know about these warehousing businesses? They are thriving. What is thriving? Thriving means it's growing, it's doing very well, uh, it is doing fantastically, it's thriving. When you say thriving, that's what it typically means. So you can see why flourishing is the right answer there. It's the only one which makes sense. Fine. So this Vitex engine is pretty well suited to certain warehousing businesses in Marania. That's great. Fantastic. Although, on the other hand, the Vitex engine actually costs more than the one's engine. So if you're talking about cost, Vitex actually costs more. This is all there is to it. End of the day, if I had to, this is a complex sentence. If I had to explain this to myself to make sure I'm there. So what do I know? Okay, there is this company called Vitex. Yes, it has come up with a certain type of engine. What kind of engine? Small diesel engine. Fantastic. Its main rival is once. It has this Vitex engine actually causes 30% less. It produces, let's say, 30% less particulate pollution than the one's engine. Great. What do you know about one's engine? One's is the main rival that's given to us. The Vitex engine is costlier, that's also given to us. And one's is currently the popular choice, at least one of the popular choices. It's widely used in Marania, that's also given to us. We are also given that this Vitex engine, it's pretty well suited for certain flourishing, thriving warehousing businesses in Marania. This is my overall understanding of this. Now, here I'm asking all these questions to explain, but all this processing pretty much happens within seconds in your brain. The only thing to do is allow your brain to do all this processing. That's the core lesson there. So everybody on page, we all have a similar understanding of the passage at this point. Just want to ensure that this understanding is there exactly for all of us. Vigorous growth, I like that used. Nice. Does Q3 have two correct answers? Yes, you did not. It was not a. You had the option to choose two answers there. Right. So, and this is you guys can check this out. This is an OG question, but it's like the first part of an OG question. So, Vitex has come up with what kind of engine among these options? Small, medium, large. Definitely small. Small diesel engine, right? Now go back here. 18 people said small, but 8 people said cannot say. Where did you miss out? Small is obviously the correct answer. For the 8 of you who chose cannot say, where did you miss out? Second question. What kind of pollution? It was particulate pollution. Now, a lot of you got it, but I did see some nice, interesting, funky answers also. For those of you who got all those other answers, what made your brain not focus on particulate? Why did your brain not process particulate? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Now, which of these is not true? And for this, you are right. You could have chosen both these answer choices, and both of these are correct. Which of these is not true? One's is Vitex's main rival. We already know that. That was given to us. We visualized that, right? At present, one's engine is not used much in Marania. This is the exact opposite of given. We have been told that the one's engine is currently widely used in Marania. So this is the exact opposite of what is true. One's engine is costlier than Vitex. One or two of you chose this, and I'm surprised to see that one of two of you, when I say chose this, you did not choose this. That's what I mean. Clearly, you're given that the Vitex engine is costlier. So how can this be true, right? So Huzan says it was a big word, particular. I didn't find it important to remember. So I understand where you're coming from, but here's the thing: you cannot always be sure which word is really important, right? So if this was a question where the logic was testing you on particulate type of pollution versus non-particulate type of pollution, and the trap that the question maker is setting is kind of based on this point. If your brain did not even process that at that point, you're not even going to get into these zones. You might go wrong, you might end up choosing something incorrect. So it's a little important, right? Now let's go to the next one. The Vitex engine is suited for certain businesses. Here I think some of you were like, okay, what does thriving exactly mean? So if you're not familiar with this word, then the best thing to do is learn from the instance. But I'm more interested to see why somebody said cannot say. When you say thriving, it's pretty much flourishing. What else can it be? Right? So again, quite a few of you chose these other answer choices, which are actually not the. If you truly understand what thriving means, you wouldn't go there, right? So I generally abbreviate. I actually said PP. That's great. I don't mind abbreviating, but when you're abbreviating, you should still process what the word means. Have that understanding of what it means. That's my suggestion, because you don't really know which word is important going in, right? That understanding comes later. That's my general advice there. But good point. Good, very good question, Huzan. All right. So we again saw these principles at work. Read slowly, break down those sentences, ask yourself questions where necessary, because that will help, right? I ask those questions for myself. Okay, what does it mean when you say it is well suited? What does it mean when you say it's widely used? When you ask those questions, so widely used means it's kind of popular. That understanding develops, your comprehension gets that extra 2%, 3%. So ask yourself questions when needed to understand ideas. End of the day, when you're given a sentence on the GMAT, your only duty is to first understand the sentence. Everything else comes later. So you can take the time to understand the sentence. That will give you much better benefit downstream. Okay, make sure your brain forms that picture even as I was reading this, right? So I come from a manufacturing background, so it is very, very easy to visualize this. But end of the day, you can think of one very clunky machinery like a diesel engine. You all have, most of us have seen diesel engines at some point or the other. So that imagery came to my mind. That's important. That gives you an extra 2% because your brain is taking in those things. Towards the end, you saw what I did. It was a complex sentence. So in this case, I chose to explain it to myself to ensure I got it. You don't have to do it all the time. So I did not do this for Kevin is taller than Devin, but I did it here because I thought it was complex. Let me make sure I have everything properly in my brain. So keep that in mind. So with this, the theory part is done. Now it's time to go back to the questions that you solved. You guys did pretty well in the questions. I'll be I'm very, very happy to see that. But I can still see that quite a few of you have missed out on some of the nuances, and that will stem from visualization. So let's get right into question number one. So I'm giving you the passage here. The objective here is everything that you have seen now, the way we try to visualize, try to apply it in this passage. And for some of you who already got it right, that's great. Try the approach. Maybe you'll pick up some nuance that you did not pick up last time. Um, let's get right into it. And I'm going to give you around 1.5 minutes. That's par for the course. All right. See you. Also, we have shared the form for the questions that follow. The approach is the same. You are going to read it, and then you're going to visualize it, and then you're going to solve those questions. So for those of you who are done visualizing the passage, you can jump right in and answer those questions as well. So just one thing, guys. Once you visualize the passage, in this case, given it's an OG question and given you're solving it in its entirety, um, I'm not hiding the passage from you. The passage is available for your reference, but do your best to not refer back to the passage. See if you're able to do it without. If you need to, you can go back, but then make sure that you remember where you went back, why you went back. All right, folks, let's wrap things up. Let's take another 15-20 seconds. Given that you're solving this for the second time, yeah, I expect you to go a little faster typically. All right, folks. So now it's time to get into the discussion. So quickly, let's hear from you. How was this small exercise of these, 6 questions? What did you observe? Any realizations? I did have the passage available for you, but at any point, did you have to go back to verify something? Did you have that urge, or were you crystal clear with each and every answer choice here? Like, yes, I got this, I got this, I got this. So, how was that experience for you? I'd love to hear from you. I like that answer. Data, data, data. Husan says I need to work on internalizing stuff. I could not understand the text, maybe only 30%. So I'm going to show you how to really understand this text, and I hope that will help you. More patient with the passage. That's great, Vikram. Good. So in this question, right? Even when you guys solved this question the first time, we had an accuracy of around close to 65% or so. Uh, and that's par for the course. It is a 700 level question, but in this is a question where a lot of people get the right answer by process of elimination. Tell me one thing: how many of you got this answer purely by process of elimination? Option D, which is the correct answer, never came to you organically, but you were able to do beautiful process of elimination and arrive at option D. How many of you had that thing going on where you just did process of elimination for this one? Vinay says had to go back for a couple of questions. That's the learning. That's where the learning comes in. Theo Andy says I did not feel the need to go back to the past. That's great. That's fantastic. Can we have a look at the main options in another 5 minutes? We are coming right up. What is the relation between Marut and Guru? All right, let's get into all that stuff now. So again, we're gonna now attack this passage together, and I want to show you how I visualized this the first time I solved it, and therefore what you're going to see is fundamentally the way I scribbled, because I wanted to replicate that for you. All right. So in the country of Marut, so you're talking about a certain country called Marut. Great. The Foreign Trade Agency's records were reviewed in 1994. So Marut has a certain FTA. Great. Its records were reviewed when? In 1994. So I kind of had that already for you. Great. These records were reviewed in light of information then newly available about neighboring Goro. In other words, Marut is looking at Goro. Marut is trying to estimate something about Goro. Foreign trade record is trying to see something. But the point is, some new information came to light in 94 about this neighboring country called Goro. So far, so good. Everything is clear. The review revealed, so this review that they did in 1994, it revealed that in every year since 1963, so we are talking about 1963 onwards, so every year since 1963, so far so good, the agency's projection of what Goro's GNP would be 5 years later. So essentially, Goro Marut is trying to estimate Goro's GNP, correct? So it is making a projected GNP. Projection is 5 years later. So currently we are in 1963, let's say. So which year would the projection be for? 5 years later, right? 1968, 64, 65, 66, 67, fifth year, 68. All right. So the agency's projection of what Guru's GNP would be 5 years later, so from 63 to 68, let's say, was a serious underestimate. What do you mean by serious underestimate? This is where I want you to really put pen to paper and visualize this. So, when you say underestimate, what does it mean? If the actual GNP is something, the real GNP is something far, far below. Now, for example, if the actual GNP, let's say in 1968, because this particular estimate is happening in 1963, it is a projected estimate of 1968. If the actual GNP in 1968 was 100, has to be some kind of serious underestimate. You could put 40 or 50 also if you want a more serious this one. But end of the day, you need an underestimate here. Everybody with me so far? You could put 60 or 70, I don't care. Like the number doesn't matter. But end of the day, it's a serious underestimate, right? So we have visualized everything till here. And I've used examples. So not just have I broken down and done that process of reading slow, but I'm also putting numbers so that I can understand things better. So far, so good. The review, the same review that happened in 94, it also revealed that in every year since 1963, the agency estimated Goro's GNP, great, for the previous year. So if I'm in 63, I'm estimating for the previous year, that is 1962, right? So I put another example here for you for the previous one. So if it is 64, I would be estimating the projection would be for 69. If the actual GNP was 90, 85 is probably a very, it's not a serious underestimate. You can put less something like 70 or 60, whatever. End of the day, it has to be lesser, and that's what I want you to realize. But let's come back to this. The review also revealed that in every year since 1963, the agency estimated Guru's GNP for the previous year. So the previous year means 1962 to start with. So in 64, they're estimating 63, and so on and so forth. In 68, they'll be estimating 69, 68. 69, they'll be estimating 68, right? But they're doing this estimation. It is a state secret, that's understood very, very accurately. This very accurately is very important. It tells me that whatever this other estimate is, it's damn accurate. So in 1963, the if the actual GNP was 100, the estimate was spot on. It was also 100. This is what it means, right? Now, for example, we have also plotted out 1968. If the actual GNP in 1968 was 100, what will be this estimate? We know that it's very, very accurate. It's damn accurate. It has to be 100. Pretty accurate. We could say 99.8 or whatever it is. Very accurate. If this one was 90, this is also 90. So what you see here is how I visualized this information. Quick question. Anyone who has followed the same approach and done this, or is this new? Either way, just register that so that I know whether you guys have learned something new today. In 96, they're not doing for 68. In 96, they would be, the second estimate would be for 95, right? If they, but we are only concerned of till 94. In any case, you're not even going into 96. 69. Yeah. In 1969, this estimate would have been done for this year. In 1970, this estimate would have been done for this year. This estimate. Perfect. Oh, that's a good question. Estimate should be for next year's. How is that estimate for the previous years? See, it's an estimate because this is a state secret. And again, you raised a very good point. If it is not a secret, if it's a factual thing everybody knows, then you cannot call it an estimate. Everybody knows it. But when it's a state secret, this you still have to estimate what it was. Nobody knows what it really was. And that again is, by the way, visualization. The minute you understand it's a state secret, that's why even the past is an estimate. God only knows what the real GNP was. You have to estimate it. I hope, Nazanin, I hope that answers your question. It's a very good question. And that for me is also hardcore sentence visualization. If you did that, you would have maybe not got confused on that point. So this is how I visualize this particular question and this particular passage. Now, before we jump into the answer choices, and I mean, I've already told you what the answer choices, the correct answer is. Before we jump into those answer choices again, very quickly, can you guys just look at the data which we have plotted out for, 1968 and plotted out for 69? Do you observe what is happening? Take any 1968 or 1969. There's an observation there, right? Actual GNP, let's say, is 100. You have this projected estimate, which is an underestimate, and you have this previous year estimate, which is done in 1970, which is actually an accurate estimate. So there is something going on here, right? You can already see why that correct answer is right. So the core learning which I want to bring here for you is, if you truly visualize the stuff that's given to you, in a lot of cases, you don't have to necessarily rely only on process of elimination. Process of elimination is great, it's important, but in a lot of cases, you can arrive at the answer choices organically if you truly visualize what's happening, right? So this want you to do that, pay attention to that. Now let's quickly go through these questions, and I do want to bring the results here. Around 19 of you chose this, which is correct, but 2 of you actually went wrong. And again, if you went wrong here, then you're not really observing who is doing what. Marut is looking at Goro's records. Marut is looking at trying to find out what is Goro's GNP. So who is doing the review? It's Marut. If I look at the second question, pretty much all of you got this right. I'm happy to see that nobody fell for this one. Which of these is true about the information? 4 of you fell for this, another 17 of you were right. For the 4 of you, what did you miss? Then newly available. So this review happened in 1994. At that point, then that means then in 1994, this information was newly available. Or in other words, it was not available earlier. If you did not visualize this, you will not catch this. Now, it's not necessary that each and every information is going to be tested on the GMAT. But honestly, while you're solving questions, you don't know what's important, right? You have to try to visualize your best all the same. That's my approach. Let's go to the next questions. This question, some of you went wrong. And for those of you who went wrong, I think you were not able to calculate from 65, add 5 and get that 70. You might have got confused in that calculation for some reason. A couple of you went wrong here. Let's look at, this is interesting. Question 5. 80 is the correct answer. 15 of you got this, but around 6 of you chose these 2 answers. Now, you guys have to tell me why you struggled here. If you had visualized it the way I have shown here, you don't have to do it the exact same way, but if you had understood that it's your duty to properly understand what's given to you. So if I have to put numbers, let me put numbers. If I have to put example, let me put example. If you had gone in with that approach, do you think you would have fallen in this question? The projected value is always a serious underestimate. So if the actual value is 100, the projected value has to be less than 100. This is the only valid answer. Likewise, with the next question, one of you chose 120, 16 of you chose this, which I was happy to see, but another four. So again, 5 of you went wrong here. Previous year estimate, we know it is dead accurate. So the only answer that matches here is 100. So, and I'm sure even among some of you who did not, some of you who went wrong in this, even some of you, I'm pretty sure, would have got the right answers. Could have got the right answer to the question, but you might have still gone wrong in some of this, right? So, any important learnings? Anything you realized? So, earlier I thought we would retry, but I think the point is already clear. So let's not get into it. We don't have to retry this. Let me jump into how we did in this question. Let me bring back our poll results. So I'm happy to see nobody chose this. Around two if you chose this. Around two if you chose this, and around 7 if you chose this, which is the correct answer. And around one of you chose this as well. So option E is arguably the easiest thing to reject because you have no idea about economic planning, what kind of impact. Economic planning is the one thing that's completely out of scope. You have no idea about it. It's the easiest option to reject. But let's come into the answer choices that are very interesting here. Now think about this. Bring back our visualization of this. 1968, you can already see, boss, if the actual GNP is 100, you have for the same agency, that is this foreign trade agency, the same agency has both these records. Look at option D. Even before the new information came to light, when did the new information come to light? 1994. So even before 1994, the agency had reason to think that at least some of the 5-year projections, at least some of these projections were inaccurate. Doesn't option D make very intuitive sense? What I'm saying is a lot of you would have rejected this choice just by process of elimination, but you can actually arrive at the correct answer organically if you visualize this well. So Nimishika, thanks for that feedback. So anything, I hope you see what we are going with here. Your visualization can immediately help you organically arrive at the correct answer. Now, I'm happy none of you chose this answer, but again, it's very, very easy to understand. We have no idea about the fluctuation. For all you know, there is no fluctuation. For all you know, every single year it was only 100, 100, 100. Nothing in the passage says this is not possible. What you're seeing here is I'm using my visualized understanding, which I developed. I'm using it even in my answer choice analysis. So all this can be 100, therefore not possible. Straight reject. Simple. Option B was somewhat popular. And again, very easy to eliminate because here's the thing. All I know is, okay, some new data came to light. So some new data became available about Goro. We have no idea if Goro was the one who released this data. This data might have come from some other source, not Goro. Also, come to that second line. We know that Marut's FTA, it made a 5-year projection, but we don't know whether this 5-year projection was based on any data that was released by Goro. Likewise, even the second estimate, previous year estimate, we have no idea what is the source of this estimate. Is it based on some data which is released by Goro? Maybe, maybe not. Zero clue. In reality, I'm not even sure if Goro has released any data. Forget misleading data or intended to mislead kind of data. So for those of you who chose option B, I hope you see why it's absolutely wrong. Option C was interesting. It was slightly, I think a couple of you chose this. And again, I'm just bringing my understanding of the visualization. Is it necessary that the amount of underestimation tended to increase over time? For all you know, in all these years, it is, or even if it is 90, maybe it's the exact same 70. Making sure that this underestimation is always fixed. It may not it may not increase with time. It could reduce with time. Anything can happen. Option C, I'm again using my simple visualization to reject it. Wrong. D, of course, was the correct answer, and E we already rejected. So, any learnings, anything useful that you learned? And again, the key point for me to remember is process of elimination is great, but you could actually arrive at this organically. So, sentence visualization helps us properly understand the passage. We saw those principles at work. I took examples because I felt the sentences were complex. I needed to do that to understand what's happening here. It can help us organically arrive at that correct answer. We saw that with option D. So essentially, you are minimizing your dependence on process of elimination, and it gives me a certain confidence about my answer. When I'm choosing that option D, it's not just because okay, these other options don't seem to be super confident about this option D. I know it's right. So there is a difference. That confidence also makes a difference for you. Okay, keep that in mind. Now let's talk about strong sentence visualization helping you eliminate the tricky answer choices. I use this understanding to eliminate option C and A, this exact same visualization, and then just thinking on the basis of that, right? Vinay says question asks us to strengthen the claims. Vinay, go back to the question, which is more strongly supported by the statements given. It's not asking you to strengthen, there is no claim given in the argument. There is no conclusion or claim given in the argument. If you go back to the passage, tell me, point out to me what is the claim given in the argument. There is no claim given in the argument. That's point one. Point two, the question is not asking you to strengthen the claim, it's an inference question. Based on this information, all of this information being true, what can you, in what is the statement that is strongly supported? In other words, what can you logically conclude? This is an inference question. So, Vinay, I think you got the question type wrong. So, therefore, the rest of your downstream analysis went for a toss. Um, so I hope this helps. I hope this gives you a picture. It's not a strengthened question. Don't, and again, this for me is your proper visualization of your question stem. Read the sentence properly and tell me, is it really a strengthened question? What is the claim? You say, what is the claim here that you're trying to strengthen? These things are claims. What is the claim you're trying to strengthen? Exactly. So this is visualization of question stem for you. All right. So that's an interesting lesson. Good questions. All right. So now let's go to the next question. And again, this is one of my favorite questions because you see visualization hardcore at work here. And here, the accuracy of the group was actually around 50% only. So this was a difficult question for quite a few of you. I can see a lot of wrong answers here. So the same process, take your time, visualize. I'm going to give you around 1.5 minutes with this one. Uh, and then let's get into the questions. All the best. All right. So now let's go to the questions. And again, these questions are a pure exercise in visualization. The passage is there for your reference if you need it, but yeah, try to minimize that. See if you can do it without it. If you have to go back to the passage, remember where and why. All right, let's get those answers in another 15-20 seconds for you. All right, folks, last 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and there you go. So let's hear from you. How were these questions before we jump into this exercise of visualization? What did you learn? What did you observe? Yeah, I think the question that Ashish posted is answered. Yeah, you have 2 minutes for every CR question. So some questions will not take you 2 minutes, but even the hardest questions typically 2 minutes. So less than equal to 2 minutes is the estimate for CR. Himanshu found this very easy. You should check this out at GC. The accuracy in general is less than 50%, which classifies makes it a hard question. And even in this group, even today, when you guys solved the question the first time, pretty much 50% accuracy. It's kind of par for the course. Much easier following the logic helped. There's so much of back-end work for CR. Absolutely. All right. So let's jump right into this. To reduce traffic congestion. So with the aim of reducing traffic congestion. So the goal is clear because the word to reduce tells me it's the goal or it's the intent. So with the idea of reducing traffic congestion, City X's transportation bureau. So City X, it has a certain transportation bureau. It plans to encourage people who work downtown. So it's a plan. What do you mean by plan? It's not implemented yet. It's just a plan. Okay. It plans to encourage people who work downtown to sign a form. When I say encourage, again, basically, I'm going through these words. I'm trying to process what it means. When I say plan, it means okay. It's not yet implemented. When I say encourage, it means I'm trying to get people to sign. I'm not forcing people to sign. So all those points will come to you if your brain is active. So I'm already visualizing a certain city X, with the aim of reducing traffic congestion. The plan is to encourage people who work downtown. So essentially, you have some city X, and downtown is obviously some area within city X. So I'm going to this is downtown for me, the way I imagined it. So you're trying to encourage people who work downtown to sign a certain form pledging to carpool or use public transportation. So I'm going to encourage these people to sign a form and promise to do carpooling or public transportation. And take a step back, you can understand why. The goal is to reduce traffic congestion. Instead of using my own car, I will be using public transport and taking the public bus, for example. So it should help reduce traffic congestion. So you can see already the plan seems to make sense, right? So, pledging to carpool or use public transportation for the next year. So, essentially, what is this plan? This promise, this plan is essentially encouraging people who work in this place called downtown to promise that they will do carpooling or public transport for the whole next year, for the next year, right? Everyone who signs the form will get a coupon for a free meal at any downtown restaurant. So, each and every person, whoever signs the form, gets a certain coupon to get a free meal at one of the restaurants in this downtown area, right? So far so good. That's the passage. The passage is clear. There's nothing more. But what is the conclusion? What is it we're trying to do? The question stem gives you that. For the transportation bureau's plan to succeed in reducing traffic congestion, which of the following must be true? So this is clearly an assumption question. So the objective is to reduce traffic congestion. The conclusion is that the plan will actually succeed in reducing traffic congestion. It is for this we need to find what must be true. So what is that underlying assumption for this plan to succeed? So I think Aditya asked the same question. Where is the what exactly is the question stem, right? I mean, Aditya is mentioning that the conclusion was phrased from the question stem. Absolutely. The conclusion is actually in the question stem, which is why sometimes I do see students ignore the question stem, just look for words like, oh, weekend, this is a weekend question, oh, strengthen is a strengthen question. No, sometimes you should read the question stem properly to understand what you have to do. So keep that in mind, which is why I said visualization of question stem also. So, end of the day, what's happening here? There is a city called City X, and there is this downtown area right there. The Transportation Bureau, the plan, they have a plan. The plan is to encourage or motivate the people who work in this downtown area to do carpooling public transport for the whole of next year, for the next year. And they are providing some motivational carrot. The motivational carrot or incentive is each and every person who signs this form, they get a free meal coupon. Great. The question I have for you is, do we need traffic congestion to reduce by a considerable margin, like 50%, 70%? Do we need that kind of reduction for this plan to succeed? Notice the conclusion is just that the plan will succeed in reducing traffic congestion. So do you need, a significant reduction, considerable reduction? Do you need that? Exactly. They didn't say that. It's important to notice and realize that they didn't say that. Even a peanut sized reduction in traffic congestion in the city is okay for them. Even if traffic congestion in city X reduces by only 1% or only 0.1% for that matter, the plan is a success. Your conclusion will hold true. You need to have that clarity. The reason a lot of you went wrong is you do not have this clarity. Now, with this understanding, let's attack these questions. What is the aim of the plan? Everybody was very clear. The aim of the plan is just to reduce traffic congestion. If I go to the results here, most of you got this one right. I barely see anybody who got this wrong. So the plan is very clear: reduce traffic congestion. What was the plan? Again, fantastic to see that all of you paid attention to the traps working versus staying, all those things. If you visualized it, if you're able to do that, it's fantastic. Now the only question is, while you are choosing answer choices here, did you have to go back and check, oh, it is work, it's not stay? The less you do that, the stronger your visualization is, right? Which of these is true? And this is where a lot of you lost it. And this was the trick question here. Option A was chosen by 8 people. Option B was chosen by around 2 people, and around 10 of you chose option C, which is actually wrong. When you say cannot say for sure, actually you can say for sure. It is possible for someone to partially abide by the pledge. Why? Your clarity about for the next year. When you say for the entire next year, the promise, what am I promising? If I sign this pledge, what am I promising? Hey, for the entire next year, I'm going to do carpooling or public transport. I won't use my own vehicle. A year has what, 365 days. In this entire time span, for traffic congestion to reduce, just reduce, even peanuts is okay. For traffic congestion to just simply reduce, do you really need me to abide by this fully? Maybe I will abide by this 30%. It's possible, right? Isn't it possible for someone to partially abide by the pledge? Forget the conclusion, forget the aim. When you have for the next year, right? It's not a single event, right? You have 365 days, so many instances where you can abide, you cannot abide. So somebody could abide by this 0%, somebody could abide by this 100%. Not even once will I break this pledge. Somebody could sometimes go carpooling, sometimes use his own car. So many of you fell for this. What did you not see? For the next year, right? Let me just check where we are. For those of you who chose cannot be sure or it is not possible for someone, do you see why it's perfectly possible? Because of for the next year. For the next year means I have so many chances to not abide. It's not a binary. Silesh, that's a very interesting point. You're making your own assumptions there. Nobody mentioned, people are getting fined. Nothing. You don't have any context to assume that. Right? Nazarinarian, that's a interesting question. Abiding is not mentioned. The word abiding is not mentioned. Does it mean the concept of abiding is not there in the argument? In fact, even your correct answer, and this is an OG question, the correct answer is about the concept of abiding by the pledge. The word abiding is nowhere there in the argument, but the answer is all about abiding, and you'll see that. So, good questions, interesting points. Let's look at the next portion. Uh, Question 4 and question 5, I think all of you got this right. I'm happy to see nobody fell for any of the traps. The last one, which of this is not a valid success for the plan? Some of you, I mean, 0 of you chose this, which is great. Some of you said that this is not a valid success. So this is the essential thing. The correct answer is option C. See, if the traffic congestion reduces by 70%, that's valid success. If the traffic congestion reduces by only 1%, even that peanuts is also success, right? The only thing that is not successes is the plan is going to stay at the same level. So the correct answer has to be C, not anything else. And again, small things, despite understanding traffic congestion, despite understanding this, if you still went wrong here, you have to ask yourself why. Only you can figure out the answer for that, right? So to answer this question, you also need to have a good understanding of what an assumption is. So uh, for those of you, I mean, I'm sure most of you are familiar with assumption, but let me just give you that recap also. What is an assumption? It is new information which must be true for the conclusion to be valid. And the question stem, in fact, asks you for what exactly must be true for the conclusion that traffic congestion will reduce thanks to the plan. When you say new information, can neither be stated nor be inferable. So essentially, correct choice versus incorrect choice. How do you differentiate a correct assumption versus an incorrect choice? A correct assumption, it really must be true. Or in other words, if it is not true, your conclusion will break down. If it's not true, your conclusion will not be valid anymore. An incorrect choice, even if it is not true, your conclusion can still hold true. It will not definitely break. Right? Keep this in mind. I do want us to retry this question. I didn't ask you to retry the previous question, but I do want you to retry this question with all the understanding that you've developed so far, okay, of this argument. All right. So, KP, can you just put the link for the retry of this question? All right. So now let's begin discussing this. So meanwhile, on the chat, why don't you register? Was there any difference between the last time and this time? Uh, did you see some of the traps that exist in some of the answer choices thanks to the visualization exercise, or did you still get confused? Let's register those points. It's a difficult question. It is one of the difficult questions that exist. So meanwhile, let me register how we guys did this time. I do see an improvement in the number of people who chose the correct answer. That's great. But yeah, let's talk about. We'll get into each and every answer choice now, but let me register this anyway. Around 5 of you have chosen this one. So there's definitely an improvement in the number of people who chose the right answer, which I'm happy to see. But one of the wrong answers is still somewhat confusing. So we are going to dive deep and understand what is actually happening here. So meanwhile, let me read what's. Alexis, I might have fallen for the traps had I not done this exercise. That's great. Let's see. Vinay, yes, it's an assumption question. You got that right. CR is a lot of fun. It's pure logic. The only question is you should start enjoying it, right? And it's the same for RC. It's the same for all sections of the GMAT. Uh, I personally can vouch a lot for CR and RC. Both of them are a lot of fun once you get to it. Now let's get into discussion. All right. So we've already understood the argument. We've done all that visualization. All that is set. Let's remember what was the plan. The plan was encourage people who are working downtown to sign a certain pledge. What am I fundamentally doing? I'm promising to do carpooling or public transport for the whole of next year. And what is the incentive I'm getting? Just one free meal coupon. At some level, you have to think, just for one free meal coupon, will you commit for an entire year? Yeah, but that's besides the point. But that's Those are things that I would like you to think about. Right. Now, argument is clear, everything is clear. We're just going to deep dive into the answer choices. Now, both the first time and I mean this time I don't I'm happy to see that whoever chose option A has not chosen option A this time, because option A is wrong. It's very easy to understand why option A is wrong. And by the way, you guys will be getting the session PDF also. So when you see this, it means these are things that if you visualize, you'll be able to approach this answer choice easier. So think the conclusion is about the plan succeeding in reducing traffic congestion. So, and we understood traffic congestion has not can reduce by peanuts. That's also a success. It doesn't have to reduce by some 70-80%. In that case, does everyone who signed the pledge have to abide by the pledge? The answer is no. What if only 10% of people who sign the pledge abide by the pledge? That's great. Now, what I typically see in this answer choice is a lot of people reject this because of this everyone. But if I gave them a slightly different answer choice, at least some who sign the pledge will fully abide by the pledge. They actually, sometimes I see students who feel this is the right answer. Can someone tell me why it is not the right answer? It's there on the screen, so it's not very difficult. You don't need anybody to fully abide by the pledge, right? In this entire next 1 year, 365 days, let's say, do people have to fully abide by the pledge? Even if only even if there's only one person who signs the pledge, if that person abides by the pledge, let's say 10% of the times, even then you will see some kind of traffic congestion, right? This fully is also not required. So pure visualization of the answer choice and the question for the next year told me that I don't need to fully abide. I can abide like 30% of the time, 20% of the time. That's also sufficient. I also understand that everyone is also not required. So there are two reasons why you should reject option A. All right. Now, in this question, a lot of people reject this choice only with everyone, but you have to ask yourself, if you did not even notice fully, then there's a learning for you. Why did you not notice fully? Think about that. If your objective is just to reject the choice, that's great. But if you read the entire choice without observing fully, that's something you need to think about. Okay. So, answer choice visualization and conclusion visualization, specific statement visualization, you're seeing all these elements here, how it's really impacting your analysis. Now, option B was somewhat popular, but it's not that popular, but I still see some of you fell for it. Uh, think about it. What does this preference have to do with anything? End of the day, whether or not I prefer these restaurants, let's say I absolutely nobody, not a single person prefers these restaurants. The restaurants in downtown, let's say, are crap. Nobody wants to eat there. Even then, out of my sincere environmental consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, I might still abide by the pledge. And because I abide by the pledge once in a while, traffic congestion may still reduce. And even if I don't like the food, even if I don't prefer the food, you're giving me a free meal, I might still sign the pledge and abide by the pledge. Thank for utilizing that free meal. The key point is this preference has no impact. Irrespective of preference, your conclusion can still very well hold true. Now let's talk about the trap answer choice, which in both attempts a good number of you fell for, which is most. Now C has two traps. The first one, again, come back to your visualized conclusion. The plan will succeed in reducing traffic congestion. You have this understanding. Traffic congestion, does it have to reduce considerably? Even peanuts is okay. Let's say a 0.1% or a 1% is also okay. Then, if this is downtown, you're talking about traffic congestion in the downtown area. Do we need most here? Do we really need that most? What if there is not most? Let's say there's just 20% of traffic congestion in this downtown area is caused by people working downtown. Even in that case, 20%, just 20%, not most, just 20% of traffic congestion in this downtown area, that is inside city X, is being caused by people working downtown. Then if these guys sign the pledge, the plan can still work, right? Traffic congestion can still reduce. So this choice does not really work. So those of you who chose choice C, tell me where you faltered. This is the most important point. What if you truly understand that what reduced traffic congestion means, even 1% peanuts is okay, then why do you need this most? Is it really required? Anyone who chose C? Because this is where a lot of you faltered. This is the choice where a lot of you went wrong. So I would really like to know what happened here. While you register that, let me give you some modified option choices as well. So if I replace this most by at least some, it is still a wrong answer. Why? Because of this word, one word, downtown. For those of you who are curious about it, I will leave that as homework. We don't even want to get into it right now. But take it this way: downtown traffic congestion. Even if even if the people who are working downtown do absolutely nothing in this zone, they contribute 0% to the traffic congestion in the downtown area. Even then, the same people who are working downtown might be causing a lot of traffic congestion in the non-downtown areas. And in that case, remember, the plan's success is reducing traffic congestion in city X overall, not necessarily just downtown, right? So if these guys are causing traffic congestion outside downtown, even if you negate this option, that is absolutely 0% of downtown traffic congestion comes from these guys. Even then, because these guys are carpooling, all the traffic congestion that's happening in these zones will get reduced. The conclusion can still very well hold true. The minute I remove this one word called downtown from this answer choice, it's actually a correct answer choice. It's one of the assumptions that you can practically, organically arrive at. So, any quick comments, any learnings? I did see a lot of you fall in this particular trap. So, Silesh, you're absolutely right there. It says congestion is in downtown, but it's actually in City X. What we are interested in is only congestion in City X. Downtown, one word also makes it incorrect. The word most also makes it incorrect. And if you're really visualizing this answer choice, you'll observe both. But at the very least, you will observe most and say, hey, most is not required. And therefore, it's a wrong answer choice. So, option D was chosen by a couple of you. And again, option D is one of the easiest option choices to reject because, again, your goal is only to reduce traffic congestion. Does it really have to be the most effective way? Vinay, thanks for that. It's good that you see. The most is also not required in option C. The downtown is also, making things incorrect in option C. Both two red flags there. So here's the problem with option D. Do you need this way to be the most effective way? What this is describing, as you realized, is this particular plan only. But do you really need this to happen? The answer is no. Even if it's not the most effective way, even if it's just moderately effective in reducing traffic congestion, your plan is a success. Your conclusion is holding true. Now, let's look at the correct answer, which is option E. Just happy to see there's an improvement there. Earlier, I think 7 or 8 of you got the right answer. This time around, 11 or 12 of you got the right answer. So I was happy to see that. Now, again, though this is not a pre-thinking seminar, so I'm not going to get into the pre-thinking aspect of it. But one thing I'll tell you, option E can be organically arrived at through pre-thinking. Pretty much the same idea. But let me explain the thought process here. We already know these things, right? We understood to reduce traffic congestion. We understood for the next year. My learning based on this visualization is, number one, for this conclusion to hold true, what is really required? I do not need most people to abide by the pledge. That's understood. I also, because of for the next year, I also don't need anybody to fully abide by the pledge. Even 10% of people abiding by the pledge, even 10% of the time, will cause a reduction in traffic congestion. So when you think about it that way, what is really required for the conclusion to be valid? Because that's what we call as an assumption, right? At least some of those people who signed the pledge, at least once in a while, at least once, they should abide by the pledge, or in other words, at least once they should do carpooling or public transport in the entire next year. In those 365 days, at least once, at least one of those people, if they do that, you will see a reduction in traffic congestion. Why is this true? Because if you negate this, think about it. If not even one soul, not even one of those fellows who signs the pledge follows the pledge and does carpooling or public transport even once in the next year, then what kind of a plan is this? The plan is useless. You are making people sign the pledge, but not even one person is following it, even once. Then how can you expect reduction in traffic congestion? Your conclusion breaks down. So this is my assumption. So what we did here is kind of what I call analyzing the argument logic. At EGMAT, some of your EGMAT students, you know that we make you do this process through pre-thinking, this analysis to identify, this analysis of the logic to identify where the argument is weak, where the argument breaks down, and therefore assumptions, strengtheners, weakeners, whatever. This process is essentially analysis of the logic. We do this via pre-thinking here. But end of the day, what I want you to realize is, thanks to your visualization, you could actually arrive at this answer choice organically. Now you're wondering, isn't it a little different? This talks about people who signed the pledge. This talks about abide by the pledge. This is where the other core skill comes in, your ability to draw inferences. When you say at least some people who receive the coupon for a free meal, who are the people who receive the coupon? The people who receive the coupon are fundamentally people who signed the pledge. So when you say people who receive the coupon, that essentially means people who signed the pledge. Next, will sometimes carpool or use public transport. When you say carpool or public transport, it means you're abiding by the pledge, because that is what the pledge is all about, right? So this is very, very important. So I hope this is clear. I see a question. Why do we not need most people? Really, think about it. Do I really need most people? What if only 10% of the people who work downtown follow the pledge just 10% of time, 10% of the time in the coming year? Even then, I would see some reduction, right, in the traffic congestion, because these people who would otherwise have taken their own cars and contributed to traffic congestion, they're not doing that anymore. Simple. Therefore, you don't need that most also. All right. So there is this other core skill that you see here, inference, the ability to draw inferences. You also see the ability to analyze argument logic. So just putting all that to summarize, you have seen through these two questions, you have seen how sentence realization helps you understand the passage. You're seeing how it can help you organically arrive at the correct answer. Not in every single case, but in a lot of cases. It minimizes your dependence on process of elimination. It really makes you more confident about the answer. Even here, once you pre-think idea that option E is automatic, within 3 seconds of reading option E, you'll know hey, this is exactly what it is. It can help you eliminate tricky answer choices. I use that understanding to reject that option C. I also use it to reject option D, as you saw it, right? It also, essentially, you're also maximizing the effectiveness of your process of elimination if you visualize sentences better. That's the impact. So I know we had kept this one as optional. We are running short of time, so this is homework for you. The session PDF will be shared, but once you try this question, do go through the visualization. I've done some stuff there for you which will help you. uh, but end of the day, let's just move on to some important takeaways, things that I want you to remember, right? Some important takeaways. Now, as you have seen, the GMAT is about certain core skills. In this session, I did introduce you to the various core skills specific to critical reasoning. In this, the core focus of this particular session was, of course, the ability to visualize sentences. But remember, you can solve hundreds of questions, but it's not necessary that you build these core skills. For some of you, that happens, but for a lot of us, that does not happen, right? So brute force practice may not always help you build those core skills. I want you to keep that in mind. For some people, yes, but for a lot of us, actually, no. You need to focus on building those core skills, right? Now, when you think about it, you essentially have two broad approaches to, when it comes to learning for the GMAT or learning for anything in real life for that matter. One is practice focused approach, and the other is what we call a core skill focused approach. So the one thing that you have to do, whether you are an EGMATer or whether you're preparing and you're figuring out how to prepare for your GMAT, or if you're a retaker who's figuring out why you didn't get your target score the first time, first figure out what kind of student you are. Are you that person for whom brute force is sufficient, or are you that person who might need a little bit more focus on building those core skills? uh, when you take a mock and when you truly analyze the mock, you analyze the questions that you get right. Did you get them right for the right reason, or did you just guess through? So when you do that kind of analysis, you kind of get a sense of this, right? A typical practice phase based focused approach is essentially the focus is on learning by practicing a ton of questions. What this means is to learn any concept, let's say to learn inference or to learn assumptions for that matter, you'll have maximum 5 or 6 questions to learn the concept, if at all. The rest, the onus is on those 80% of time that you spend practicing a ton of questions. Hopefully, in some cases at least, some of you will pick up through this process, but you don't always see that. There's also a lack of a progressive building up of concepts. So the core point is, practice based approach. We are not big fans of a practice focused approach. When you come to a core skill focused approach, the one characteristic that's very very interesting is you have dedicated learning activities to build each core skill with progressive difficulties. Now, for example, in our course, and EGMAT students who are here, you guys have seen this. There's a reason we ask you to do the inference module first. Once you get through that foundation, the very first core CR thing that you do is inference. There's a reason for that. This is the biggest module of all. But you've actually noticed what the files are and what's actually happening in the file. You will see a mapping to the process skills. So we are trying to teach you how to draw simple inferences from single statements. We are trying to teach you how to visualize stuff. Through all these things, you'll actually start learning visualization. And you're starting to build these skills. It's not that just by doing this you're mastering it, but that's why there's this concept of progressive difficulty. Once you start learning it, and as you go through the course, the questions get tougher. You see that progressive difficulty also setting in. The ability to draw inferences from multiple statements is an important core skill, so we have to cover that as well, because once you learn it here, by the time you start solving questions here, you are going to deal with multiple sentences. So the ability to draw those combination inferences is very important. It's only when you're this comfortable with sentences that you will be able to do the questions that are here pretty well, because here it's all about being able to understand the logic. You're also introduced, by the time you reach the application files, you're also getting introduced to the other core skill. In this case, for inference, the ability to analyze answer choices. What makes something a right answer? What makes something a wrong answer? When it comes to assumption, the progressive aspect is there. So these skills that started with inference are getting honed a little further, but then we also bring in pre-thinking, and the objective of pre-thinking is to help you analyze the logic. It's when you say pre-thinking, when you say falsification question for EGMAT students, what exactly is that question? You're trying to identify where the argument is weak, where the argument is breaking down. In other words, it's a critical analysis of the argument logic. So we're trying to teach you those things here, and then with each question type you have to learn how to analyze those answer choices. So in assumption, for example, you need to know what the negation test is. In evaluate question, you need to know how the variance test works. So there are some certain conceptual entities that you need to understand. The second aspect is the solutions are also focused more towards teaching core skills. Now, in this session with me, you've been here for 2 hours with me. In these 2 hours, I gave you some principles of how to learn, right? How to visualize things. Some of those things you'll actually see in option. You remember I drew downtown and all that. That visual aspect, getting your brain to form the picture. When you go through files like this, the intent is this, to get you to think in a visual way, because that imagination has to happen in your brain. You saw how we approached things chunk by chunk. We did not read the entire sentences in one shot. So you see how some sentences, sentence by sentence, we're just breaking things down. The use of numbers is also something, as a way to visualize something, is also something that I've discussed today, and something you will see in this course as well. The use of questions. So I asked you, after making you visualize every statement, I asked you specific questions, right? 3 4 questions or 6 questions. That's also there in some of the course elements, where we make you build that visualization ability. So precisely what I made you do while answering, I will not show you the passage, at least for the first 2 exercises. That's what you saw. So you see questions like this also, and then you have detailed solutions also. The final part is, of course, you also need a certain level of progress tracking to ensure that you can course correct as needed. So when you look at this 100%, I want you to realize this 100%, you're not talking about percentage completed. No, this is your score that you get for the course. If you got everything right, if you got all the questions right, if you truly understood it, you'll get 100%. Now, for example, in the case of the student, this 50% is feedback that, hey, you have to do something about it. You have not really understood this. So that student has to go back and spend time on it. So there's feedback that's built into the system. Progress is tracked at a granular level. End of the day, 3 aspects of a core skill approach, and this you don't typically find in practice-based approach. Essentially, the most important aspect, these learning activities are all specific for the purpose of learning. These questions that you solved in the course, all of this is just for the purpose of learning. The practice part comes later. For that, we would have EGMAT, we have Scholarinium, and somebody else would have something else. But end of the day, Scholarinium is meant for practice and refinement. But this entire thing, all the modules that you see here, the only purpose is learning, to build those core skills, right? And we truly believe that this is the approach that helps you maximize success. And the reason we say that with a certain level of confidence is, yes, we have found a certain level of success with it. So some of you might be familiar with it. I'm sure all of you are very active participants on GMAT Club's YouTube channel, and on GMAT Club, of course. So uh, this is all the 700 plus scores that are reported on GMAT Club and verified by the ESRs, by GMAT Club administrators. So that's the reason why we've had all kinds of success stories. Somebody who was already good got better. Somebody who started at a not so great place also really got better. So these are all clickable links. When I share the PDF, you can check this. So this is a recent review from one of the students I had the pleasure of interacting with. So some of the things he says is very important. He specifically talks about how he is able to understand the argument better. So you're truly able to draw those inferences, visualize, so that he could build that understanding of the argument. Then he talks about how pre-thinking helped him truly understand the logic. And when he says that, he's also talking about building that analysis of logic piece. He also talks very specifically about answer choice analysis, because that's also taught in the course as a learning skill, as a specific skill that has to be built. So one more review for you. Uh, is GMAT 603 benefited a lot from the pre-thinking process? It really built in that logical thought process to approach CR questions. The thing about CR questions is they're not complicated. We are not CR is not a test of formal logic. It's a test of informal logic. So it's not really rocket science. It's not easy, but it's not rocket science. If you have a good process in place and if you can follow that process, a lot of times you will be successful. Invariably, success will be there, right? So, is there's one thing that I want to leave you with? It's the visualization principles. All right, so I think that's it. I don't see any further questions coming in. So, with that, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you're logging in from. See you next time. Thank you. One thing I can say is, if it was useful, do put a like on the video if it was useful for you.